Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, a couple who grew up together and had a seemingly happy marriage faced turmoil when the husband discovered his wife's affair with a longtime acquaintance. Heartbroken, he confronted her, filed for divorce, and exposed her cheating to their social circle. Devastated, she lost everything, while he distanced himself, leaving her desperate for closure. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I started hanging out with each other as teenagers. We are the same age. At first, she was my best friend, but as we grew up, I started to believe she was my soulmate. Our hangouts became more like dates without the rest of our crew. After having intimate relations for the first time, we both wanted to get married. Each year of our marriage helped me to grow as a person. I was naturally shy and found it very hard to cope with change. For that reason, I didn't see myself ever traveling far from home for weeks at a time. But my wife added fearless adventure and hope into my life. We went to Hawaii, Canada, and Ireland. These were the top 3 places my wife wanted to see before she died, and we got to all of them before the age of 33. We used to go to clubs and stuff like that when we started doing more athletic things to stay in shape. The thing we loved a lot and did the most frequently was mountain biking. My favorite part was getting home and sharing a shower and cup of tea together. We had several mutual friends we knew for years and friends from each of our jobs. We would have a mix of friends over once a week for games and drinks. One night, one man in particular was invited. I didn't know it at the time, but he was AP. We both knew him since we were 14. This was the first time I'd seen him in a while, and he was acting particularly interested in my wife. He wanted to know all about what she was up to and her accomplishments at work. He was impressed and staring at her. The others noticed but continued chatting amongst themselves. I was glaring at him. He commented on what an amazing cat she was. I took ownership of her and told him I knew I was the luckiest man on earth. As he took a sit from his class, he mumbled something that sounded like I must be too. Then I asked what he said, but he played it off like it was nothing. While the men played Texas Hold'em, my wife and the women played dominoes in the living room. AP was extremely competitive with me. I felt like I either did something to tick him off, or he was jealous of me. He was furious when he lost, but my wife came in and patted his shoulder, assuring him there'd always be next time. He licked his lips and raised his eyebrows like he wanted her next. I jumped up and asked what the heck that was. He just played dumb and swore that I must be a sore loser. I leaned over him, telling him that he was just ticked off that I had a woman he could only dream of. He jumped up, so we both started screaming in each other's faces. Several of our friends, including my wife, separated and calmed us down. Outside, I was venting to my best friend about the things AP did and said and how uneasy I felt around him. That's when I saw through the window. AP pulled my wife close to him, hip to hip, forehead touching. She smiled before she pushed away playfully, only for him to follow her. She looked like she was being teased by someone she loved dearly. I was extremely disturbed. This moment haunted me for days. I tried to justify it in any way I could, but it just didn't feel right. I lay awake one night at 3 a.m. until I decided to check her phone in the living room while she slept. I figured out her passcode and found my worst fears. All the evidence I needed was just waiting to be discovered on this little device she carried around 24/7. I never considered the possibility of her and AP having an affair, let alone one that was going on for 18 months. Her camera roll was filled with pictures of AP's junk, her injury-parted lips, tongue sticking out, anything you can think of. Their messages spelled out everything, discussing their amazing sex when they did it. How they did it, how much they loved it, and how bad it would be if I found out. But that last part was just how my wife felt. AP wasn't worried at all. He was trying to convince her to tell me the truth so they could be together. He wanted her to live in his apartment, but she loved my house and pointed out the fact that AP made less money than me. I couldn't believe she thought about these things, but not about how I'd feel if I knew she was cheating on me. It was like that didn't matter because she planned on keeping me in the dark for as long as possible. After I got copies of their whole conversation, at least 100 screenshots and 10 pictures, and put her phone back on the nightstand, I laid wide awake on the couch. It felt like I forgot who I was. When I found out my wife was cheating, I felt like a little boy who wanted to go home. Home wasn't there anymore. It was the worst feeling I ever experienced. I had to keep going. When she woke up in the morning, she was worried and concerned about me sleeping on the couch. She asked me a whole bunch of questions, like was I mad at her? Did she do something wrong? What happened? She's sorry, and so on. I didn't feel like anything she said to me was worth answering. I wanted to accuse her of so much that anything I said wouldn't do my pain justice, so I gave her the silent treatment. I refused to answer anything she said, so she started to freak out and say she didn't deserve this, and stuff like that. I left the house to file divorce papers and contact a lawyer. He advised me to wait until she got served. That way she'd be less prepared to defend herself or make up lies about me. I was home with her, sitting on the couch with the television off when there was a knock at the door she was served. She looked at me with huge watering eyes, very confused. She begged me for answers. Now she got on her knees in front of me and wanted to know why. I gave in to her dramatic performance and told her she was nothing to me anymore. That's why I was divorcing her. I showed her the screenshots on my phone, yelling that she was nothing but a lying, cheating, ugly actress that doesn't deserve a man's trust. I promised her I knew that for a fact because I was the man that trusted her. And all it got me was years of my life gone like a prison sentence with a ghost. Everyone we knew throughout our lives and in town found out about her affair and immediately cut her off or treated her differently. Now she was just the one that cheated on her husband. Lost everything. She lost the house. She lost her friends. She lost the great life we had together. Now she just trolls Facebook and Instagram, watching the people she used to know in person. She comments on anything I post, asking me questions all the time about anything. She's desperate for an answer, but I never respond. Today's second story. In this story, Opie discovers his wife's infidelity with his own brother through a forgotten laptop. Heartbroken and enraged, he gathers evidence, files for divorce, and exposes their betrayal to his parents. They disown the brother, leaving him homeless. Despite his wife's pleas for reconciliation, he ends the marriage, leaving her struggling financially. The brother never apologizes. He prioritizes self-respect and family loyalty over their deceit. Now let's get into the story. My wife, 46 female, seemed perfectly content in our relationship. She never told me, 49 male, that there was anything bothering her. As a matter of fact, she had it made. Even though she worked and made her own money, she was married to me and my family was extremely wealthy and kind. A few times, I grew weary of her thinking she might not be as mature or smart as me. She would joke about finding other men attractive. When we watched a show with a woman that had an affair going, she justified it by saying her husband wasn't giving her the attention she deserved. Since I gave my wife lots of attention and my parents taught me that marriage should last forever, I never let myself believe anything was wrong. I did ask my brother once if he thought I should distance myself from her or test her in some way. He told me absolutely not because it would be dishonest of me to investigate my wife without confronting her and telling her how I felt. He knew how hard it was for me to be honest about my feelings, especially when I felt like it could cause an argument or problem when there might not actually be a problem in the first place. I realize now that he only told me not to do anything because he was closer to my wife than I ever knew. It all came to light one day when my wife told me she was headed to work, but she forgot her laptop. She absolutely needed her laptop in order to do any of the interviews she was supposed to conduct. I waited for her to return for it or call me, feeling that this was the test I needed to happen. She didn't come back for it. She didn't call me. As a matter of fact, I tried calling her, but it would only ring and go to voicemail. That was unlike her as well. Her phone was usually in her hand in case her boss needed to get a hold of her. I knew basically right away that she wasn't at work. I decided to open the laptop to see if I could find anything. The pin was her birthday. It was signed into a Facebook profile I never saw before. There was one unread message. I clicked on it, and it was from my brother. It said, "See you soon." I read previous messages that proved my wife and brother were having an emotional affair. They said, "I love you," and my wife said he was the one she should have married. Heartbroken, furious, and betrayed, I drove to my parents' house where my brother still lived in the lower-level basement. My wife's car was parked there, confirming what I just read. My parents were not home. I snuck along the side of the house to the entry door to the basement. I had no idea if it was unlocked or how I could get in without them seeing or hearing me. After a few seconds of deliberation, I decided to start filming on my phone and just slowly opened the door. It didn't make a sound, and I was able to see clearly my naked brother on top of my wife. They had no idea the door was open or that I was filming them. You can only speculate as to how broken I was at this moment. I stumbled away, leaving the door open. I had my proof, but I didn't feel like I could keep myself together. Nothing mattered to me. Now that my wife of 14 years was cheating on me with my own brother, he had absolutely no consideration or respect for me. I felt pure rage replace the devastation, and I vowed revenge. I decided my brother didn't deserve any bit of our parents' inheritance or support. How dare he live with them for free and take his brother's wife? It's like he had no intention of living a life of his own. Well, his mooching days were over. The first thing I did quietly was file for divorce with the video evidence of my wife cheating. Before I could do anything else, my wife returned home, and I couldn't contain myself. I started yelling at her for the first time in our marriage. I showed her the video shaking, furious that she had the nerve to deny she was cheating. After watching the video, she took on this attitude like it didn't matter anyway, because I couldn't stop her if she wanted to marry my brother. Instead, she added that my parents would support them because they loved her and him just as much as me. I just laughed and said she was right. She could marry my brother while they both lived on the streets because they wouldn't have anything when I was through with them. She was completely stupid with an ego blown up to the sky. So she packed her stuff and drove back to my parents' house. Imagine her surprise when she arrived to find my brother standing outside the house with his stuff strewn all over the grass and mud. I already sent my parents the video. They kicked him out immediately and told me I would be the only one to receive inheritance because they were both dead to them now. They were so set in the belief that marriage lasts forever. But even more important to them was the unbreakable bond between family. The respect and support you offer to your family no matter what. My brother disappointed them beyond words, possibly even more than the betrayal I felt from him. He was their baby, and he hurt their other baby, me. So as soon as my wife saw that he was cut off with his stuff thrown everywhere, she didn't try to help him or stay. She just drove away, back to my house, where I changed the locks and knew I wouldn't have to let her back in. She banged on the door, begging and sobbing for me to take her back. She called herself every name in the book in an attempt to get me to open the door. Thankfully, her tricks didn't work on me. My instincts were right. She was a terrible wife. She and my brother separately were forced to start searching for jobs and a place to live. In a few months, my wife's car that she was repossessed because I stopped making the payments on it. Last I heard, she moved in with a friend and is trying to get back on her feet. I don't know what happened to my own brother, but he never tried to apologize to me.